Good evening.
Good evening.
Everybody, I'm thinking everybody's doing good. My name is Ted Roll, Grand Chief.
Which one? Yeah, show me just some of the presentations.
For the Wyandots since 2010, June of 2010. And I inherited the job because the Grand Chief decided he had enough and he resigned. And so I grabbed something that I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And my wife thought I was crazy when I come home and told her I became Grand Chief. So, but with the friendship that I have gathered and partnerships and relationships that I've come across in Chief Billy and Chief Jan, they've been great supports. And we've done a lot of things together. And Scott and Maureen Bentley are great friends. And I'm only allowed to call Scott till a certain time at night, then we're cut off. But we've done a lot together to help bring the awareness of the Wyandot Nation to people's interests and their awareness, and have them have a better understanding of where we came from and who we are. Because if you ask these two chiefs up here, it's all about being a Wyandot and what is a Wyandot. And we have had a lot to do with the United States and our own people and the things that we've done and the things that we've taught. My mother always told me that I should pay attention to history. Well, it took until I was 60 years old to start paying attention to history, and I could understand why she said that, because she was a history buff herself, and she was involved in the city of Rockwood, and she was part of the Historical Society, and she was always into history and trying to find out different things. So the history of the Wyandot of Androdon really started in 1972 in someone's basement, where they decided to form a corporation called the Wyandots. And we've celebrated, it was always a first Sunday in August, we always had a family reunion. And in 1972 it became the Green Corn Feast. And we still celebrate that to this day. And over the last few years we've been making some baby steps and getting into ceremony, naming ceremony. We've had two naming ceremonies? Three. And it's drawing an interest in our own tribe. I know if it wasn't for this guy sitting behind me, I probably wouldn't be here. He's a great support. He's a good friend, and so is Jane. But I brought some pictures along to show you what's up in Detroit, in the Michigan area. And I'm sorry I said Michigan, because there's no Ohio State. But that's where the Wyandots come from. I'm sorry. But Chief Billy came up after we met, and we took him around to different spots, and we took him and introduced him to Scott and Maureen Bentley, and then we took him down to up to the wildlife refuge and met John Hardy. And those are two big government agencies up there in Michigan that play a big major role in southeastern Michigan by what they both have accomplished over the last 4 years with a little help from the Wyandots. So that's why I have a curfew with Scott. Because if I was retired, we'd be in a whole lot of trouble. But anyway, how are we doing?
In a lot of trouble. I don't know that we have that. We've got the interns.
A conference in Wyandot back in 2012, and I think it's been a racetrack to the finish line, and the finish line is way over there. So we got a lot to accomplish and a lot to do. We have done a lot in 4 years. So, but one of the things up in the Detroit area is Assumption Church. And as you go over the Ambassador Bridge, It's on the north side. And the Assumption Church has a lot of connection with Chief Billy because his ancestor, Adam Brown, is buried outside of that church. And we don't know where, but we know that he's out there. But the Wyandots had a lot to do with the building of that church because we owned a quarry back then called the Androdon Reserve. And so that was one of the churches that we built. And the Wyandots built churches so we could get the front row. Okay. And when the first Wyandot to Wyandot experience, we had a member that was turning 100 years old. His name was Ernie White. And so Chief Billy and I got together, and while they were up there with the interns, we celebrated his 100th birthday. And he was giving his daughter and granddaughter a little rough time, and I just said, well, tell him the chief said he better be there. And he showed up, they got him a wheelchair, and he turned 100 years old that July that they were there. St. John the Baptist Church in Androdon, or Amherstburg, was also built by the Wyandots, and that has connections with me because my grandmother was baptized there, and she was married in that church in, I think it was 1900, I don't know what it was, 1900 something. But she had 6 kids, 4 girls and 2 boys, and that basically makes up the Wyandot of Androdon Nation. From them 6 kids, there's 1,300 members.
Oh my.
So there's 2 big families, the Grunda family and the Roll family are the 2 biggest families. And also we have Fort Malden that played a big part in the Battle of 1812. That's right across from Grosse Ile. They have 2 cannons. When we toured there, they got 2 cannons that could shoot the cannonball across Lake Erie and hit Grosse Ile. So they protected the opening of the Detroit River during the War of 1812. This is more of the battle, or the Fort Malden. And then we had the Battle of Brownstown on August the 5th. That is their monument. And you can tell that those are the wrong cannons. They're a little bit too big for the time period. But right next to and the other history of this is that Adam Brown owned the property where the battle took place. He had 2 lots, and that's where the Battle of Brownstown took place, was on his lot. And then a little bit later, you'll find that there's another connection. This is the interns and us. There were 70 people that went touring southeastern Detroit or Michigan and learning about their ancestry, where they come from, and what the area looks like now. Then you have the River Raisin battlefield, where the Wyandots and the British were quite successful in the Battle of 1812 at the River Raisin. That, in fact, that was January 22nd. I remember that. In 2013, or no, 1813. Got it. Okay. The battlefield, I've become quite involved with the battlefield. I sit on the executive board of directors there, and the Wyandots helped play a major role in helping that battlefield become as popular as it is, along with Scott and Marines' hard work. The battlefield is, what do you say, we're up over 100,000? 200,000 visitors a year. So it's a quite nice place to visit, and it's very history related. Okay, and this is the group that traveled. You have the mayor, Monroe, in the background. You got Dick Mecca, who heads up the foundation for the International Wildlife Refuge, and you got everybody involved. There's 2 other guys looking. Hey, we take good pictures. There was Scott explaining the battlefield. We're going back over to Canada. I'm sorry, it's not in order. But that's the Wyandot Cemetery in Amherstburg, Ontario. A lot of my ancestors are buried there, and it's a historical marker cemetery. It's no longer, you can't no longer have burials there. But our friend Ernie White made it there. Compliments of his kids. They had a little ceremony and they spread his ashes over the cemetery because we couldn't get permission to bury the ashes, so they just took it upon themselves. And so Ernie is there. And this is more pictures of the monuments there. And you could see Grosseal from there. That's another city in Michigan. The Oakwoods Metro Park is the last known reservation of the Huron Wyandots. That's where we came, when the Removal Act came, we left there. My ancestors went back to Canada. A few people went to Kansas with these guys, and but they came back, they didn't like it. We have the International Wildlife Refuge, which is 2 or 3 miles on the Lake Erie that will never ever be developed. And I happen to work across the street from there. I know more about that property than most people. It was back in the 50s, it almost became a steel mill. Okay. And if it wasn't for the cost of dredging Lake Detroit River to get the iron ore boats down there, we'd have been looking at an ugly old steel mill. But it didn't happen. And then when the visit of the interns, we blessed the grounds. We had Chief Billy and Second Chief Norm and myself, Second Chief Clyde. We blessed the grounds. Okay. And that's Luke. He has taken residence at Lake Erie Metro Park. He has a bad wing. He can't fly. And then Tom Worrell is a member of our tribe, and he's the most Indian-looking person in our tribe, so he got to be the mannequin. This is a statue in Wyandot, Michigan, at the Wyandot's name. It's a bronze statue. It was 1999 or 2000? 2000. That was the last time the 4 chiefs were together. For the dedication of that statue, they have a big street fair up there in August or July, I think it is. And the profits from that, they started giving back to the community. So the Wyandots were the first to receive the donation of the statue, and it sits exactly on the Battle of Monongahela. And how they got that, we don't know. They just took a lucky guess, and I think that's where it landed. And they have a nice pavilion out there, and so we had a picnic and a celebration. This was the last day there, and a good friend, George Guth, he likes that totem pole. It's all about the Wyandots. The totem pole is not a Wyandot thing, it's a Western tribe thing, but he wanted that totem pole, and the city of Wyandot gave it to him. But he's a good friend. This is 6 Points. Remember seeing the cannons at the Battle of Brownstown Monument? We are across the creek from them. It's a 15-acre site that was purchased a few years ago by the Wyandot Nation, and it has a lot of stuff to do with the Wyandots, because there's some burials there. There was burials up in that northeast corner, and I had the pleasure of going to the University of Michigan Archaeological Department, and they're in the process of giving stuff back to the Michigan tribes, and there is a box that says the Gibraltar Dig. So when this property becomes more developed, they're going to come home. We're going to make sure they come home. And so this 15-acre site, we worked with the university, environmental and natural resource programs, and to develop it. We wanted the front half next to the road will be for the general public, where we're going to have a cultural center, community building, small longhouse, so they can see what the Wyandots were like back then and what they know us as of today. And then the back half will be ceremonial and for the tribe use. But it's a quite aggressive project. When we first sat down, they said, "What do you want us to do?" I said, "Well, you go for the home run. You don't just, you can always scale down, you can't scale up." So that was the gist of the meeting, And so it was a lot of fun working with them. Towards the end, we got together about once every couple weeks and put a very aggressive plan together. And it's quite neat. We don't have a picture of the finished product. But in my spare time, I've been making a lot of trips down here to work with Betsy and Jean and Marcia and Lonnie to put together the history of the Wyandots. Thanks to Chief Billy for introducing me to these wonderful people. They helped us with the journey toward understanding, which brought to mind a light to everybody that the Wyandots had played an important part, and it was to bring the awareness and the understanding of where we come from. And I think we've done a great job. The first journey was the mayor of Monroe, Eastern Michigan President Sue Martin, Monroe County Community College Hojo, and we had the Wayne County and Monroe County curriculum directors, and Scott called and said, I got this harebrained idea, and I said, well, we got to go to Kansas City first. But we put these people on a plane, and it was interesting to sit back and watch these educators change their attitude, their awareness, their understanding. It was just that good. So the next year we put together a bus trip called Journey Toward Understanding, and Marcia was on that trip. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears between Scott and Maureen and myself and Chief Billy in putting it together. There was 37 of us on a bus, and there was 14 educators. There was 2 teachers from Kansas, 2 teachers from Wyandot, Oklahoma, and 12 teachers from the Michigan area. And it was, again, nice to sit back. I'm sorry, I didn't sit back a lot, Scott. But to watch how they changed their whole outlook of how to teach in general, Native American history. Because they all said they were doing it wrong. And so they put their curriculum together with the help of Scott and Maureen, and now it's being taught in those school districts, Native American history and the Wyandots. It was just a lot of fun. We had the cultural committee from Wyandot Nation on the bus, and everybody was texting everybody and sending pictures back, and I think you had to shut your phone off, didn't you? Because you were getting a lot of requests because people wanted to go on this tour. But it is very interesting. We were up in Michigan, down Upper Sandusky, to St. Louis, to Kansas City, and to Oklahoma. The best part was we got to fly home. We had to fly back. But it was a well-planned trip. Scott became the 5-minute guy because we were on a strict time schedule.